Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to what is going on in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And we've seen that since 2019, with the unilateral actions taken by India of revoking the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, what ensued was that there was a highly militarized zone that occurred, and then of course ever increasing way that we've seen the people of Kashmir deal with this particular issue, with the demography of the area also being changed and altered with draconian laws of course in place, and the suffering of the people of Kashmir that has been going on for generations, for decades, that still of course continues. This is of course problematic in terms of what the Modi government also has to deal with in terms of whether or not they can actually successfully suppress the voice of the people of Kashmir that have been fighting for their inalienable right to self-determination for quite some time now. And it is because of that that we see that the freedom fighters of Kashmir of course respond to this, and this is something that now is of course troubling India more so than ever. And this is important especially in terms of the discussion around the future of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and what really lies ahead in terms of the people's struggle and what is going to be the aftermath for the government of India as well, and how closely linked the two are. That is going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to be taking a look at home in terms of the kind of political circumstances that Pakistan is currently dealing with, particularly in terms of what the government is calling the constitutional package that plans to be introduced, something that hasn't really been tabled before the federal cabinet so far. But of course, we've been hearing statements coming in from different political parties. There have been negotiations and meetings going on even over the weekend with the opposition parties, trying to see what sort of support can be garnered from them with regards to this constitutional amendment, which of course includes the way that the judiciary is appointed, as well as of course the tenure of the Chief Justice of Pakistan. So we're going to be taking a look at what exactly is the debate that is being centered around this particular discussion, what are the core issues, and whether or not this is going to be something that will be supported by the opposition parties, by the judiciary, by the government, and of course different political and important decision makers. We're also going to be taking a look at what this means in terms of the separation of powers and the sanctity of both the judiciary and the parliament. That is going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal. And we've also been joined online by our guest, Mr. Altaf and Wani, senior leader APHC, and Mr. GR Baluch, who's a former ambassador. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the debate today and joining us in the discussion. And I'll start with you, Wani Sab, in reference to what has been going on, of course, in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. You've been part of the struggle, you've been an advocate of the people of Kashmir, and you've been putting your voice across, fighting for the rights of the people of Kashmir. But at the same time, of course, you have also experienced the many, many decades of oppression that we've been seeing in the valley, and then, of course, in the way that it becomes perhaps harder and harder to making sure that we're moving towards freedom. But what keeps the resolve going on, and what keeps the morale of the people moving on, and how exactly will then you correlate that with what is going on with the freedom fighters in the occupied valley as well? Something, of course, that these people have given to, since, of course, this is an oppressed area. And of course, we've seen that Indian occupying forces and military personnel keep on increasing every single day.
Thank you, Sana, for having me. First of all, I think this question should be asked to the Indian military officials as well as the Indian security apparatus that who are claiming that the Indian occupied Kashmir, there is calm, there is normalcy, and they have done with the Hurriyat Conference and the freedom fighters in occupied Kashmir after 5th of August 2019, putting a siege of the whole territory of Indian occupied Kashmir, then introducing such measures that that each and every political space or a civil space was opened for the people of Kashmir in Kashmir Valley. And India started propagating it to the international community that there is calm, there is normalcy in Kashmir, and in a way they tried to convince the international community that the application of Article 370 and 35 has been taken well by the people of Indian occupied Kashmir. Kashmiris tried to respond to all these things in their own way, but unfortunately, there was, as I told you, India deployed more and more troops in Kashmir, and it became the most militarized zone. It was already, but more and more military came there And there they used the laws like UAPA, and then demolition of properties, then taking away the properties, putting the leaders behind the bars, and killing people at will, and thereby suppressing their voice. So there was the response from the people of Kashmir that has to come, from the youth of Kashmir that has to come, which were long awaited. So they responded it. When you choke all those spaces, you say that there is normalcy, but a normalcy of the graveyard when you put that much of repression over here. Then the youth of Kashmir decided their own way. As I have been telling to you before, that as long as India continues with this, they will receive in the same coin by the youth of Kashmir. So they had no other ways to express themselves. They expressed themselves in those areas where India thought that they had already conquered that area, there will be nothing done for that, and where the settlers were coming in and were settling there. So it was to unsettle that India's move, which India wanted to that to bring those settlers from the rest of India to settle in Indian occupied Kashmir, and they were settling in the areas of Jammu and all. And so the youth, the resistance group, they decided that they will first of all make them know that we are here, we are alive, we continue to resist whatever India measures or Indian measures are. We will continue to resist in whatever way. We will continue to resist in peaceful way. We will continue to advocate at international level. We will continue to pay the Indian army in their same coins as they are doing with our innocent people.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And Ambassador Saab, I want your take on that as well, particularly when we talk about what, of course, the Indian media and the Indian government have been calling and naming militants. It's important to know that, and you've reiterated this on our shows even multiple times, that any place where there is occupation, where there is so much military, where there is a force that is oppressing the other, and of course has occupied the lands, then the people who are suppressed or occupied have the right to respond back, and even if that means taking up arms. And so I want your take in terms of how is it then that this propaganda is being viewed by the international media and of course by the international audience, important decision makers as well. While we talk about the area having a special status as per the UN Security Council resolutions, while we talk about the fact that it is being occupied by Indian forces, why is it then that this entire narrative is being put forward that there are militants in the area who are only fighting for their freedom?
Yes, Anna, we have been discussing this Kashmir, tragedy of Kashmir, that has now, it has been 75 years, like 7 decades. And the probably third, fourth generation of Kashmiris have grown up under the Indian occupation, under the Indian suppression. And I think the spirit of freedom has traveled from generation to generation. When that happens, then it becomes an unextinguishable fire, and a spirit which cannot be suppressed with power, a brute force. And I think India does not understand this very basic logic. The other logic, which is again a logic of history, logic of political science, the logic of the sociology, that if you close all the avenues of human expression, whether it's political media, whether it is through elections, then what is the other option? Obviously, the people, we are so programmed, the humans, that
but
they
isn't
will
that the point,
even
though?
fight
Isn't
for
that
the
the
freedom.
point, though, what India is trying to achieve when it's closing all other options? So they can
Exactly.
project this as militancy.
Yeah, that is probably, is it that it is in their design to force Kashmiris to pick up arms, and then they have a casus belli, as they say, or a reason to come up with repression of the Kashmiris. That be possible. But at the same time, Kashmiriyat, I have been advocating Kashmiriyat, that it is thousands of years of old Kashmiriyat, this identity, nobody can take them away from you. Whether it is India or any other force on this in this world, it is now into the blood of the Kashmiris. So saying that by abrogation, by holding these fair elections, they will be able to take away from their identity is not possible. We have seen people, we have seen history. Uh, there are several nationalities, they fight for hundreds of years for their identity, but that identity does not dilute. It remains. It remains. In fact, the interesting example is in Central Asia, where we had these Muslim states. There was so much of suppression against them under the Tsar, then again against against them under the communist regime, Stalin and other people. So still, you see the Chechens still have the Chechnyan identity. You cannot. Likewise, there are several such Muslim and of course non-Muslim also, some of the social groups which have been suppressed by some bigger powers, but they cannot dilute. So this is identity goes with the human nature. So I think India has to understand it, that it cannot, whether it holds elections, whether it whatever drama is played to just please themselves, but ultimately they have to grant the legitimate rights which are enshrined in the Security Council resolutions. I have been emphasizing that, in fact, the Indian claim has just simply no legal, moral, political, social, historical legs to stand. So how do Indians just on the brute force will be able to take away all that? It's not possible. Not
right,
at
and
least
that's very important
this time.
what you said, Ambassador Saab, but despite all of that, we've seen that there are actions that have been taken unilaterally and actions taken without consequence. And Faisal, I want your take on that, because we're of course sitting in 2024, August has just passed, and it was back in 2019 that we talked about these unilateral actions that were taken, and it's so many years later, and we see that the situation has only worsened. And while of course Pakistan has been putting forward this stance, putting forward a lot of evidence, putting forward dossiers and making sure that every platform does discuss this issue, at the same time what actually protects this entire issue are the UN Security Council resolutions, which seemingly are ineffective in terms of providing the justice to the people of Kashmir, and at the same time we see that those who are actually fighting for their freedoms are being termed as militants, and it is again of course this whole cycle that continues in the militarized valley. And so I want your take in terms of what then is a way forward for both the people of Kashmir, for Pakistan and the international media and bodies such as the UNSC, because it seems that all of this continues with mere rhetoric about what is right and wrong, but no real action.
Yes, and it's a very good question. And when it comes to international organizations, especially United Nations and any organization that is attached with the United Nations related to, of course, ensuring peace throughout the world, they need to, of course, get over with the fact that they have the double standards when it comes to when it comes to Kashmir, when it comes to Palestine. They have other standards set, and when it comes to countries like Ukraine or countries like East Timor or South Sudan, they have entirely different sort of stance, and they call them liberations and not these liberations, the legit liberations. They simply ignore them. Reason being, they have their own obviously relations with Israel and relations with India. They keep them relations dear. Otherwise, of course, there is resolution 47 and that needs implementation. And of course, when it comes to Western countries and the United Nations and all of the right forums, they of course favor in a sort of favor India. Why? Because they have their own gains from India. But when it comes to coming towards the abrogation of 370 and 35A back in 2019, right after that, if this was a step forward by India, at the same time there were steps taken by the liberation voices from within Kashmir as well. When we talk about Kashmiri resistance, it got increased, and with time they have actually gained momentum. Reason being, this wasn't the only step that was illegitimately taken by India in Kashmir in 2019 of abrogation of 370 and 35A. But with that, what they started doing was that they actually started attracting hardliner Hindutva ideology people to actually get settled in Kashmir, so that they can disturb the demographics of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And they have been, of course, demarcation was one of the factors as well, in which certainly, Sana, very funny aspect which I wanted to actually talk about here. It's kind of funny and kind of astonishing as well. Why? Because there is a place called Anantnag, which for Kashmiris it is Islamabad, but India intentionally calls it Anantnag. And there is Amarnath Yatra, they call it Amarnath Yatra, and it wasn't famous at all till the government and the military of India, they started propagating that, and they started hiring sort of all of these swamis and all of these pandits, so that they can go all over India and tell people that this Amarnath Yatra is some kind of very sacred yatra. If anyone is having some problems, if they do this yatra, they'll be, of course, getting fruits of it and all. So suddenly there was, of course, we know religion plays well. So people actually were psychologically forced into coming towards Anantnag and Islamabad, of course, for Amarnath Yatra. And now they've just started sort of portraying that, oh, there is religious significance for India as well in Jammu and Kashmir. And it used to be part of Kashmir before, but after the demarcation, they changed the district from Kashmir to, they changed it to Jammu. And why? Obviously, they have their own ways to deal with the things, and now they increased the military, they increased the number of military there, and the presence is one of the most militarized zone in the world. Yeah. It is already considered. At the same time, if we look towards the liberation force, the youth who gets picked up by the very forces in the name of, like, we need to, of course, interrogate these people. During the interrogation, whoever gets killed, they simply declare them as they were the terrorist, and they were somehow doing terrorist activities. And then what happens is, there is a fear within Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir that either way you are going to get killed. So if this is the way, then of course we'll take up the arms and we'll start fighting for liberation of Kashmir. And that is why the liberation movement, it has gained so much momentum that now the heat is being felt by Indians. And this these 4 years, more than 200 of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Indian troops, rogue troops, they were killed, and thousands, they were of course injured in the attacks. There's one very important thing which I wanted to highlight, and that was related to where do they get the ideas from. Well, the very fresh ideas of utilizing the drones and for surveillance and all of that, liberation forces, these people are getting these ideas from Ukraine, because in Ukraine the similar kind of warfare is being fought. And I think if that is being considered as liberation war, why not the Kashmiris? Of course, they are getting all of these ideas from there, and time is not far that the intensity of the attacks on Indian rogue military, it will increase.
Right, and this is what I want to talk about further as well, Farrukh, especially when we talk about the current regime with Modi government again in place, and what Faisal has been saying is also being echoed in different media reports as well, saying that this is becoming a problem for the Modi government. But in terms of fundamentally whether or not that actually is something that the government is concerned about, or even is going to be worried about, is of course a matter of question. And I want your take on that, whether or not, because that truly exists, because we've seen that over the many years and decades that we've been talking about the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This has existed before, and there are governments that have dealt with this in the past as well, including of course BJP's, but that hasn't really made a difference in terms of what they do and how they go about doing things. And so Does this actually pose a problem for the Modi government, A? And B, what of course Faisal is saying in terms of where this technology is coming from or where the training is done, it may be from wherever, but what is being blamed is of course Pakistan. What is being said is of course Pakistan by Indian media, and that is the propaganda also that the Modi government is putting forward. So how do we go about that, and whether or not that's something you think is being taken in on face value?
Thank you very much, Sana. First of all, let me compliment you for being so bright. You just actually put your finger at the nub of the gist of the problem, right? And allow me to actually deconstruct, actually reverse engineer the entire story.
Okay.
And that is going to give you the answers that you require. Particularly if you want to understand the anguish in Kashmir, Ladakh also, because they used to be one body, right? Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. So if you want to do it, forget about Muslims for a second and listen to, Sonam Wangchuk, the guy after whom, Three Idiots, Funsuk Bangru character is named. And that person kept on actually on, starving himself to death for months in protest of the incursions of, big tech companies, big businesses into Ladakh. Ladakh is also a finite place, and of course, because that is, these businesses want to take over those places, right? We are right now currently looking at it with the, through the prism of the, oft-repeated binary of Pakistan versus India. But what you have to look at is Kashmiris and people in Ladakh also versus the big business and their capture. What happened on, August 5, 2019 was not merely, Kashmir being stripped of its identity or Article 370. It was bifurcated into two states, two union territories to be correct. And then they abolished another thing which had actually worked as a, huge, support system for the locals. And that was Article 35A. Article 35A prohibited anybody from outside Kashmir or, Jammu, or for that matter, from Ladakh to come and settle or buy or own properties in Kashmir. So now what happens is that gradually with one element Faisal has already mentioned, and that is that these people are now, domiciles are being issued to people from outside. But that is not all. It is essentially the, resource-hungry big businesses like Adani and Ambani, which seem to be expanding into Kashmir. And because the Modi government is so craven, it is so beholden to those interests, it seems that there is a natural worry among the locals that they are going to become a minority, and which is not merely for Muslims of Valley, which is also for Hindus in Jammu. By the way, there is an election that is about to take place, and before that, what happened was that BJP had to issue and recant and then reissue its list of candidates because there was humongous pushback. This is among the Hindu constituency. So I was thinking whether this story at this time, essentially we are actually, the idea of this discussion came from the Guardian story. So whether it helps Modi or it actually undermines his interest in Kashmir. And then a very interesting question came to my mind. Why is it that Guardian always thinks of publishing such stories whenever there is an election in offing? It actually started, it published a story about India involved in Pakistan and killing people here, right before the elections in India, national elections. And at that time, what was the reaction of Indian government? They used it to their benefit. And they started saying, "Ghus ke marenge." We have been saying that we will hit you inside your home. So this is what we are doing, right? Now again, this story, at this time, what does it do? Modi administration, Modi government has forgotten about Muslims and they are not even trying to woo the Muslims in the valley. What they have been trying to do is reconstitute constituencies in Jammu to expand them and give them more numbers, and so that the Hindu population votes for them, and then with a few independents they can sway the elections. So what does it do? It actually constructs a story in the mind, or this binary in the minds of Kashmiri Hindus, that it is us versus them, that they are killing us. By the way, this whole process or this insurgency, whatever it is, started just before Indian national elections, and now it is being highlighted again. Surprise, surprise, there is an election going to take place, and this time, unlike in the past, Modi government does not speak for all the Hindus in Jammu either, because Congress has actually, with national conference, they have formed an alliance and they are very effectively campaigning there. So this kind of stories, I don't know, but Kashmir every time helps Modi.
Right.
Kashmir stories. 2019, it was Pulwama. After that, everything was set aside. In 2014, the army pushed back, I think, and that's why there wasn't anything like Pulwama, but they kept on using these stories. Now again, it is happening again. And our Charlie Browns, we are always happy to actually keep on trying to kick the football, which is not going to be there.
Right, Wani Sahib, and I want your take on this as well, because it seems that whatever is going on or whatever is being talked about then seems to be benefiting the Modi government. And so while that is happening, how does one fight this menace? Because at the same time, while the people are suffering, they are being called militants, unfortunately. The people, of course, are living in an area which is highly militarized. Then again, we've seen the special status being revoked. We've seen draconian laws. And while there seems to be this net of the UN Security Council, which says that this is something that the people of Kashmir get to decide, that is not the reality on ground. So in terms of the powers that exist and in the way that the Modi government has been able to execute them and get away with it, what do you see in terms of the way that we now want the people of Kashmir or the people of the world to actually respond to this fight? Because while, of course, there are freedom fighters, while of course there are people still struggling, their generation standing up to this military, there is of course the support of Pakistan and other voices from around the world, there are platforms taking up these issues, it's still not helping the people on ground and their lives to be changed. So I want you, as a leader who's of course done this at the forefront, what do you expect and how do you see this fight evolve, and how would that actually then impact the lives of the people?
You see, first of all, what has been said about the current situation in occupied Kashmir, and it will help Modi. I see the last year in the parliamentary elections, again, we saw that Modi's mantra about Pakistan and about Kashmir, what they said, that has failed to now fetch the support of the people of Hindu population in Kashmir and elsewhere in India, where we see in India that their scores declines from what they asked that we will have 400 plus, it was merely 242. And now in Kashmir also, we have seen in the parliamentary elections, BJP's vote count in the Hindu-dominated areas of Jammu, it declined from 46% to 24%. This again, the resurgence of the struggle in those areas again says the failure of the Modi government. Whatever Modi government can, it's true what Pitafi was telling us about that the Guardian story, what it is and how it has been manipulated. That is true. It has come at a time, very sensitive time. But at the same time, the people now come on the ground, come to know that everything Modi is telling us is not true. What Modi has been telling to the people of India, what the people of Kashmir or the Hindus of Kashmir, we have eliminated everyone. There is no one to do it. And you can see in Indian occupied Kashmir now, there is, you can see the crowds coming out with the people who oppose the BJP, who oppose the Indian narrative, who oppose the abrogation of Article 370, 35A, though they are arranging the elections which are not substitute to the right celebration. But even then, you can see what is the people's will. People's will is very much seen on the grounds on the streets of Kashmir, they are against the India, they are against the Indian current political dispensation. And the same is in Poonch, Rajouri, and also you can see the same in the Jammu also in the current situation. So for the people of Kashmir, to say what we can do. For the people of Kashmir, there's only one thing, that is to struggle. They will struggle, they will continue their struggle. Whatever the form is, we will continue our struggle. Whether
But
anybody listens or not.
Wani Saab, do you feel that you have gained anything over the years? When we talk about struggle, and I understand it's of course hard, and I appreciate the fact that they're doing it in the face of so much adversity, but I want your take in terms of what you feel that you have actually gained over the years as part of this struggle. What have you won?
Yes, actually, we have won lots of things. There are lots of positives.
Okay.
Although there is a huge human loss, there is a huge collateral damage to the people of Kashmir. But at the same time, the Kashmir struggle is well known at each and every power center of the world. It is known now to each and every civil society around the globe. You cannot quantify that, how much it is. But I will tell you one thing. That these things happen. These are the events. It's not. I can't say that it will happen tomorrow. Pitafi is telling us about the central.
Absolutely, and I understand that. I understand that this is of course there's a long way, of course, unfortunately, with change. But Ambassador Saab, I want your perspective on this as well, considering, of course, the way that you understand foreign relations and perspectives of different countries. While, of course, we talk about the struggle of the people, and of course their resolve is there, and it's something that have been continuing for so long. How is it then that you feel in terms of the urgency or priority of this particular issue internationally and the way that it is being taken? Do you think that in terms of the way that the people are actually fighting for this, the way that Pakistan is actually presenting this stance, are we doing it the right way? Are we taking the right approaches? Are we reaching the audiences that we want to? Are we effective in terms of getting the message across?
See, I won't pass any judgments whether we have succeeded or not, because it's very difficult to measure the success, as they say, quote unquote. But what I would just like to emphasize that the world knows. I mean, you talked about whether we have been able to get the attention of the world powers of the centers of world power. Yes, of course, they know it, that Pakistan and India are two nuclear powers, and Kashmir is a flashpoint. At any time, by accident or by provocation, and we have seen it in Pulwama what happened. So I think world is very much conscious, and I don't know that whenever there is a discussion in the capitals of the world about the peace and security in South Asia, Kashmir is just ignored and not discussed. It's very much on the agenda. If we are talking of the agenda of the peace in the world, and especially in South Asia, definitely Kashmir remains alive. Kashmir remains on the agenda, and definitely the struggle of the Kashmiris, political struggle, as well as their own struggle against the suppression by taking up the arms, does not go unnoticed in the world capitals. And I think it's always there. The history teaches us that there are two components always. If people want to sacrifice for there's no shortcut. They have to. I mean, there is the freedom has to be shuhada. That is how it is. Yeah. The truth needs shuhada. So I think there is something which is difficult to explain on the material logic, but there is also a metaphysical aspect to the Kashmiri struggle, as I say. So I think from the point of view of political struggle, I think we are supporting, we are raising at all forums, we are discussing the very fact that every fortnight, every 1 month, we discuss on our official channels. We bring in our friends from all over the world, even from India, wherever we can find. So I think it by itself shows the commitment of the people of Pakistan, the governments, right, whosoever is the government in power, the commitment of Kashmir. So I think that will remain, and the commitment of the Kashmiris to their own cause, I think, is unshakable and suppressible. And we wish them and we pray for their success, that one day we'll have Kashmiris as part of Pakistan. Absolutely. Kashmir banega Pakistan. Pakistan and Kashmir zindabad.
Right. Sana, with your permission, I just want to chip in and I want to explain my perspective on how successful the movement have been.
Okay.
It is fifth generation. Gen Z is the fifth generation since the whole issue began. And do you know how difficult it is to keep a movement alive, a struggle alive? Usually when you have a country as rich and powerful as India, which throws money at every problem, it is very easy to just give up and sink or to actually be submissive to it. But the fact that now Gen Z is also standing up for their rights, that actually shows you that the struggle is alive and struggle is its own reward again, because there is something they know they want and they are not giving up.
Right.
I think this is in itself is a huge accomplishment. And the fact that the world, even if it tries to ignore, knows there is something in there and there are people who are suffering because of that, that also amounts to a lot of contribution.
Absolutely.
And so now one more thing I wanted to highlight here. Though we have a large number of Indian rogue military presence in Indian illegally Jammu and Kashmir, occupied Jammu and Kashmir, right now it has the worst sort of high rates of feticide plus suicide rates within the military ranks, and the biggest reason behind it is that of course many of them who do not come to terms with the kind of treatment they are extending to the people out there, somehow of course their moralities, of course they themselves realize with time and they go towards the suicide or feticide incidents within the military. And I think this shows the sort of magnitude of this very issue of Jammu and Kashmir that needs to be highlighted more and more, that though the Delhi, it has the will to of course carry on this brute force to be used in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but at the same time troops itself, there are many people within the troops who believe that they are wrongfully there and their actions, they are against the humanity.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador G.R. Baluch and Altaf and Wani Saab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. And while, of course, we talk about this issue, it's very, very important to understand and, of course, appreciate what has been going on for so many decades now and the way that the struggle continues across generations. And Farrukh, you're right, this is indeed commendable. And we, of course, have all of our support there to our brothers and sisters in the occupied valley. We're now going to be moving on to our next segment that takes a look at what has been going on in Pakistan with reference to the political situation in the country, particularly of course in terms of the way that constitutional package, what the government is terming, is seemingly going to be coming out very soon. It still hasn't been put forward by the federal cabinet and we haven't really seen what exactly it's going to be about, but of course it is something that is being referred to in terms of judicial reforms, in terms of aspects which link to the way that the tenure of the Chief Justice of Pakistan is going to be established, of course the appointment of judges and others, and then of course points towards a larger debate and controversy around what sort of aspects will be there in terms of the division of powers. And Farrukh, I want your take especially in terms of what that means in terms of the constitutional package in itself, what you understand by it, what the government seems to be proposing, and whether or not there is any obvious or direct conflict that you see in terms of the separation of powers.
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I think that so far, because it is a developing story, and the fact that most of the people we spoke to hadn't seen the manuscript itself.
Sure.
It is very difficult to actually speculate, but from whatever has been reported, we know now that there is going to be talk of a constitutional court. There are going to be certain changes in Article 8, I'm told, but that is regarding fundamental rights, and the purpose is to bolster it, right? Especially strengthen the Parliament of Pakistan. And then there are umpteen other developments as well. I think that usually what happens is that this country is so polarized right now that, and the media doesn't know how to, focus on a story on its merits, and it has to always make it about us versus them. Because of that, unfortunately, the media coverage has been wanting for quite some time. I think that it is not the way it is being projected in the media. The purpose is to only, or at least I hope that is so, to institutionalize more powers, give more powers to the people, more strength to the parliament, and then creation of constitutional bench is or court for that matter. Sana, let me jog everybody's memory that it was Benazir Bhutto, Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto, Shahid Benazir Bhutto, who actually came up with the idea. And the fact is that while we keep on taking a lot of cases to the Supreme Court, and that is why there is so much pendency, because high value and more controversial issues immediately rise to the top, and they are focused by everybody, and naturally that creates a situation where other issues are, relegated to the back burner. And this is what the law minister was also saying, that there were people who were his clients, and there was a review petition or some kind of appeal in the Supreme Court, and by the time that issue had to be resolved, those people actually came back after serving their sentence. So with that kind of a situation, and I've told you my own experience, some case that was going on 20 years ago, and that still is going on. It is related to my family. So with that kind of a situation, I think that diffusion of power is never bad. But of course, it should not be actually used to alter the direction of natural development of an institution.
But then how do you ensure that when diffusion exists?
Through debate. If we are not always fighting among ourselves, and if Parliament doesn't become a circus, Parliament can actually sort these things out. This is, remember, it was the Parliament of Pakistan or Constituent Assembly which came up with the constitution when it seemed impossible. Then Article 18th Amendment also was passed at a time with a vigor that seemed impossible, but everybody was taken on board. This is what the government seems to be trying right now, and it seems difficult, of course, because of the number game and the situation and the verdicts and all that. But in the end, I think that it is going to carry the momentum.
All right. Faisal, I want your take on this as well, particularly in terms of what you understand by constitutional court and what aspects do you think will be part of it? What exactly will happen in terms of the way that both the parliament and the judiciary and the executive powers and of course everybody else involved are going to have their own sanctity, and then of course with reference to their own jurisdictions, while at the same time contributing the larger interests of the country. Do you think it's possible with this package, that the details so far that we know?
In a scenario which should be favorable for everybody, it should be possible that it should be acceptable to everyone. But when we talk about the setup which is being talked about, I mean, what I have grabbed from whatever has been happening on Constitution Avenue since almost 48 hours ago, of course, it is the Supreme Judicial Council, of course, that is the talk of the town, and they want to, of course, increase the judges. And when it comes to placing someone as a Chief Justice, of course, it can be selected by President of Pakistan on the advice of Prime Minister of Pakistan, and probably this is the way forward they are looking for. But overall in the picture, when we talk about the democracies, when we talk about the state itself, of course on Constitution Avenue, the most important building is Parliament. Why I say this? Because it's all about the will of the people. What kind of laws, what kind of regulations or rules people want them to be governed under. I think it's entirely up to the people. That is why we always say that the assembly that actually is the product of will of the people, that will of the people actually is to make the laws or decide about what the laws should be. And when it comes to, of course, our judicial system is to make sure that them laws which are being, of course, articulated within the parliament, they are implemented everywhere.
One correction. You said SJC, right? Supreme Judicial Council.
Yeah.
I think that you meant Judicial Commission that appoints the judges.
Yeah.
Because the other one is for accountability.
Yeah. See, we are confused what is going on.
No, but
that was part. Yeah.
This has been there for quite some time.
Yeah.
Since 18th Amendment.
Yeah. So this is the the essence of it, that it's entirely on the will of the people. I mean, Parliament is supreme, and it should always be considered supreme, because we are a democratic country, and the people's say should be considered as.
But Faisal, I actually haven't been able to grasp your perspective on that. What exactly are you?
You're not
supporting?
allowed
What's
to be
your stance?
diplomatic here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sana, you remember, I mean, almost 2 years ago, when the previous government, the kind of steps which were being taken on Constitution Avenue that day, even at that day, I maintained the same thing. Because if we talk about the, a democratic country, in a democratic country, it's all about the will of the people. I mean, what do the people want? And people,
all right,
they
let me
give their will.
Take it from here and make your life a little easier. Farrukh, I want your perspective on whether or not, when people are actually concerned about the fact that the executive might have more powers than they should, or that the justice in the way that we understand it is compromised. Is that a genuine fear, you think, of people, or are they misunderstanding the situation?
Right. I don't think, Sana, at this moment, I haven't seen the manuscript, but I have seen the reports, the very latest one. And there seem to be very tiny changes, right? For example, the Chief Justice of Pakistan is now going to be called Chief Justice of Supreme Court. Likewise, Attorney General is going to be included in the commission. Things like that, right? And that is not a big deal. I mean, those things are going to take place anyway, and there has to be some progress. Regarding the Constitution Court, remember that diffusion of power is not bad. For example, Turkey has a unicameral system. That means it has only one house of parliament. Why do we need two? Because Pakistan's population disparity is huge. And that would ensure that if there is only one house, then Balochistan practically doesn't have a voice in the parliament, right? That's why you created Senate. Similarly, if this creates some kind of balance, that Supreme Court can do what it is supposed to, and all these controversial matters go to Constitution Court, then why not, right? Now, the whole idea, what is being said, and I think it is mostly shadow boxing, because nobody has no idea what exactly is going to transpire. Because of that, everybody keeps on associating with individuals rather than institutions.
Right.
And I think that institutions are going to win eventually, and democracy is going to prevail.
Absolutely.
One thing everyone is sure about, that Maulana Fazlur Rahman has actually turned out to be very important.
Oh, that is one thing that I want to actually talk about as well.
We have 30 seconds.
Now we cannot write off anybody, because we thought that he is gone, and he is so relevant now.
Absolutely cannot take anyone lightly on that. But of course, we're going to be here to talk about the way that this transforms and evolves in the future. And while we, of course, have more information, there is, of course, going to be a lot of discussion in terms of the impact and the way that people understand it. But we'll be here to clarify that and talk more about that in further detail. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate, as always. That's all that we have from the show. We'll now see you tomorrow.